You are listening to Ordinary Eccentrics. I'm Courtney Lofton, and together we'll uncover the extraordinary lives of ordinary people. Let's hop into it.
Well, first, I'll thank you for being on the podcast and taking the time. And for anyone listening, I've worked with Leigh in a life coaching relationship. She's been my life coach the past few weeks and has really helped me. I'm looking forward to getting to know you personally. I'll have you. Oh, I just asked you to introduce yourself, starting with your first and last name.
Yeah, my first name is Leigh. My last name is Savage.
Nice. And Leigh, where were you born and raised?
Oh, I was born and raised in a small town in like a farming community in Ontario, Canada. It's called Delhi. Super
Delhi. Okay,
small.
cool.
Yeah.
What was it like growing up there? Did you live on a farm?
No, thank God. No, but
Okay.
a lot of my friends were no. A lot of my friends were farmers.
Mm-hmm.
But it was like I didn't even actually live in town. I lived outside of town. So far more rural than a lot of my other friends. Um, and it was okay there growing up. At the time, I didn't really appreciate small town living, but i- it was a very, I would say now as an adult, a very white, big C, conservative,
Mm-hmm.
narrow-minded uh, community, a space. Which I just didn't fit into that mold. So it was hard at times, but I appreciate now the simplicity that it offered.
Yeah. Tell me more about growing up in a rural area. Did it ever, I feel like some people, especially who live in cities, think rural and they think it could be scary to like live out in the woods, but
Yeah.
how was it for you?
I mean, this was like in the 70s and the 80s, so it was really
Mm-hmm.
different. Like I went to bed, like we never had locked our doors, we never did any of that stuff. There was no threat, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
It was I mean, I was fortunate that both of my parents drove and both of my parents were working. So we had means of transportation and so we could get around.
Mm-hmm.
But I loved it. I loved being able to step outside and just see a sea of stars and to be
Yeah.
surrounded by fields and be surrounded by beautiful trees, the cleanliness of the air.
Mhm.
Um, I loved it. I loved it somewhat.
That's
I mean, there are
amazing. Yeah.
downfalls, but
Well, what was it like being a child growing up in that? And like, what was school like for you?
oh, school was hard. I was raised Catholic,
Mhm.
um, and I went to a very small Catholic school. It had one hallway. Um, my graduating class, I think maybe there were like 15 of us all together in grade eight.
Oh,
But I
wow.
was always really different growing up. I asked different questions, questions that
Mm-hmm.
people didn't really know how to answer. And I was always very emotionally in tune with others, which
Mm-hmm.
made my some of my experiences to be really difficult. So I was bullied a lot as a kid. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have a lot of friends. I had some friends, but not like not a huge amount. And I would say probably my elementary school years were probably the hardest because I didn't understand. I just didn't understand people, and I didn't understand why people were so mean, and I felt different. People didn't know how to interact with me. They didn't know how to deal with my questions. So I
And
learned
that
at a
was an,
very young
yeah,
age not to ask
young age.
questions. Yeah.
Mm. What kind of questions were you asking?
Um, Now I understand that I was asking all of the right questions, But because I was
Mhm.
living in a very white, big C community, they didn't
Mhm.
appreciate the question. So, big farming community, we had a lot of offshore migrants who would come in and
Mhm.
they would work some of the fields. And sometimes I would go into their living quarters off season.
Mhm.
And I remember asking my parents, like, why do we have all of these racialized people coming into work on our fields when we have a lot of homeless people here in our own country? Can't we offer them jobs? My parents didn't know
Mhm.
how to answer that. I remember being in grade 6 and getting really mad at my teacher because he was talking about like all of the history lessons that we were going to learn, and the history was very much from a white European lens. And I can remember asking him like, why aren't we learning about other history? Like, what about Black history? What about, Mexican history? Why is it always white history? And I that question didn't go over very well at all. So people just didn't know how to how to answer my questions. And now I
Right.
understand that what I was doing is I was trying to challenge our education system and the education that I was being taught, and I was trying to challenge um, perhaps some of within the farming community, some of the
Right.
practices.
And at the time, you're young, so you're innocently asking these questions because children
Yeah,
observe and they see things like very clearly. And it's like,
yeah,
yeah, they're not taking in all of the political nuances that other people the adults are using to like, make these decisions. I think that's really cool.
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So tell me about high school. If you went up through eighth grade, what was like ninth through 12th like? Was it a bigger school?
So for me, we had grade 13 at that
Mm-hmm.
time. This was like in the 90s. Um, so high school was a lot better. Um, well, I would say that my earlier years in high school, I had much more of a transitional time, just trying to find friends, trying to find my people.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the best things that my dad did for me is put me in theater because I was very quiet. I was very shy because I had been bullied a lot
Mm-hmm.
and really questioning myself. And I needed to find my people. Um, and so he had started like a young theater, like a theater company to help support kids where they didn't, youth where if home wasn't the best place for them, then they could at least come to the theater. So I joined theater, and that's when I found my people, my friends. Um, and I had a lot of fun in high school. I like like academics, that was not my priority, but definitely partying and having fun and
Yeah.
being very naughty, that was sort of my forte. I had a lot of
Yeah,
fun in high school. Yeah.
that's cool. So wait, do you have like theater roots within your family for your dad to have started that, or was he like really thinking about you when he started the group?
No, my dad started it because he had had a very, very, very difficult childhood
Mm-hmm.
and adolescence. And he had always thought that if he had had a place to go to that was safe when he was a teenager, that he would have really appreciated that.
Mm,
How he thought of the idea of developing like a theater company, I don't know, but his intention was to create a safe space for youth and for kids where if home wasn't safe for them, that they could at least find safety within the walls of the theater that he was creating. Safety and
cool.
community.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Mhm.
So you found your people in theater
Yeah,
and
yeah.
kind of got more comfortable in your own skin. Tell me about your journey to self-awareness and just learning more about your authentic self.
Mm. That's a long question. That's a loaded question. Um, I think that has always been something that I have been working on. Um, I have always known that I'm different, not only because of the questions that I ask, but that's on more of like an intellectual level, but on an
Mhm.
energetic, spiritual level. I've never really felt like I belonged. And I can remember as a young child and even as a teenager, and if I'm being honest, I still do it to this day. I stare up at the sky, and when I look at the stars, it's like this overwhelming feeling of being homesick. Like I could
Mm.
remember as a child and living out in the country when it's dark out, like there are no city lights, so it is just like a sea of stars. It's beautiful. And I would just stare up at the stars and just cry because I was so homesick because I do remember what it's like on the other side. I remember the feeling. I remember the warmth of it all. And I didn't understand what this feeling was that was going on within me, and I could always connect really well with other people on like an spiritual or an energetic level. um but I kept it scared that scared me, and I really squashed that really quickly within myself. I can remember as a young kid in my parents' basement in our house, and I would go through our basement and like on my hand, like walk my hand along all of the walls because I was convinced, absolutely convinced that there was like a secret portal.
Wow.
And again, I didn't know what that was. I just thought I had a really active imagination because I did have an active imagination. That was the narrative that was told to me. But again, as I got older, I kind of squished that back. I kind of, put that into a little ball and shoved it in the back of my brain. But every so often, it would pop back up again. And it would remind me of like, there's this thing within you that you need to pay attention to. And then fast forward many years later, the pandemic hit, and I work in a very high stress job. I was not working from home. I was going into the office, into a very stressful, difficult environment. And it got to a point where I was like, I cannot not deal with this anymore. And I think it was just my stress threshold was too high that it made me like I had to deal with it. So I tried to find um, and along the way, along the journey, I had been trying to find different people who could help me with this. And as a oh yeah, as a young child, when I would stare up at the sky and I knew I wasn't ready, I would ask the universe. I'm like, I just need a coach. I just need a teacher, somebody to come across my
Mhm.
path and help me to step into this thing that I don't really quite understand. And so along my way, I would work with different people to try to help me to understand, but they weren't the teacher and I wasn't also ready for it.
Mm.
And then about 3 years ago, maybe, I found my coach. And I use the word coach really loosely because I'm not really sure she would describe her as that, but she's more of a teacher, where it got to a certain point where I could no longer deny this thing that was sitting inside of me. And so she
Mhm.
really helped me to tune into how to listen to energies and how to listen to my own inner wisdom and how to tap into that feeling of homesickness and remembering what it's like on the other side, how to use that power and how to use that wisdom. And she helped me to validate that when I was as a kid, and I would, walk my hand across walls that there legitimately were portals there that I could sense and I could feel, and I was just looking for them, and I didn't understand what was happening.
So when you say other side, is it like the universe, the galaxy, or is it like a spiritual other side, like a heaven or something like that?
I think it is a both and situation.
Mm,
I think heaven is a form of the universal other side. It's all in how we
mm,
construct it. It's all in how we understand it to be.
mm-hmm,
As I grew up Catholic, and so you were raised that when you die, you go up and there are these beautiful pearly gates, and then somebody's waiting at the gate to let you in or not. I
mm-hmm,
don't believe that is necessarily there, but I think it's multidimensional in terms of different galaxies and different timelines
mm,
and different dimensions and different spaces. And just this point in time, I happen to be a human
right.
on on this planet, is my experience.
Got it. So like some people have past life experiences or they like tap in and hear the stories of their past life. Is it something like that where you're tapping into your past life and maybe you were a different species of like extraterrestrial or from
Yeah,
another galaxy?
I definitely think that I have been both. It's going to
Mhm.
sound really weird, but there is a portal in my bedroom that is extraterrestrial. I know that they're not from this planet,
Mhm.
um, but I know that they're here to help to protect me. And I've done a lot of work to engage with
Yeah.
them and talk to them to make sure that, because they're in the bedroom, to make sure that they're here for my highest and greatest good. So
Right.
I think I've been around. I know I've been on this
Yeah.
planet before, but I do believe that I have been on other planets and other dimensions.
Have you ever read Dolores Cannon?
No.
She I think this was in the 90s. She writes about basically all of this, all of the extraterrestrial species that come down and try to help us and try to like give us the information we need to like make Earth like bring Earth back to life. It is, and she interviews people who have are experiencing, like people exactly like you who have experienced these connections and they can't explain it. And she does like this channeling work, and like she basically speaks to the other aliens or extraterrestrials through these people.
Mm,
Really,
I
really
love
interesting.
that.
I'll send you the link after. I had someone send
Yeah,
it to me
yeah,
and I was
yeah.
like, "Oh my gosh." But I'm curious, like when you have these portals around you, and this is what reminded me of Dolores Cannon. There it's not like you moved into a house and there's a portal. Wherever you would be, wherever you would have moved, there would have been a portal because they're coming to speak specifically with you.
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so sometimes with different events, not only just the portals, but like sometimes when people will say someone's name who is deceased, that will open up a window and it's like a floodgate will come through. So I was at this documentary
Sorry.
screening.
Will you repeat that just before the open the window and a floodgate? It kind of went, the line dropped
Come,
a little.
so like a floodgate will come through of
Mhm.
people who have passed on.
Okay.
So I was at a documentary screening maybe a couple months ago or so. And when we were doing a land acknowledgement, because Canada is the traditional territory where I'm at, traditional territory of the Anishinaabe,
Mhm.
Haudenosaunee, and the neutral peoples. So we always do like land acknowledgements. So when she was doing her land acknowledgement, she specifically talked about an Indigenous woman who had been murdered and missing. And
Mhm.
as soon as she named her name, it was like because everybody comes with people, our own guides. And all of
Mm.
a sudden the room just became very, very, very crowded and I could feel all that energy. And so driving home, having to make sure all of those people aren't coming home with me because I work really hard to keep my home really safe and protected for me and my family. Um, but the portals, when we moved in to this house, which was a while ago now, before I know what I know now,
Mm-hmm.
they were all here, and I've been able to close some of the portals, but some I keep open, like the one in my bedroom, because I know it's actually here for my highest and greatest good.
Okay. And how did you find out the ones that weren't?
It's really just a sensing, it's a feeling, it's a
Mm,
connecting with the portal, and it's connecting with who is behind it. And I don't know, it's like it's a knowing. Like
mm-hmm.
I don't know really know how to describe it. Like I don't know how I know, but I just intuitively and instinctively know what is good and what is not good.
Right. It's like a gut feeling if you're walking down a street alone at night and you just feel
Yes.
like, oh, I should turn around.
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
yes, yes, yes. Yes.
And do you have feelings like good or bad when you just meet people, strangers?
A lot of times. Yeah. I will know who I align more with and who I don't. And in my type of work, I'm a social worker and I work in the area
Mm-hmm.
of trauma. So I'm surrounded by people all the time. And
Mm-hmm.
knowing energy, like energy attracts like energy, I'm surrounded by people who are attracting that energy of trauma. So I
Mm-hmm.
already know that a lot of the people who I intersect with, that they're carrying energy that does not align for me anymore, which is why I've been very intentional through this coaching program is to find people who and a community who resonates at a frequency that I resonate at, who
Right.
is not going to take my energy, but is going to feed my energy.
Right. And people who have experienced trauma, is it the energy from the trauma that they're carrying, or would it be something that's almost already there from a past life or from some sort of negative energy that they've attached to already that kind of leads them or guides them towards trauma?
Oh, that's a tough one. I think the trauma, I mean, so I really believe that we all make contracts when we come
Mhm.
onto this planet around what does our soul need to learn? What does our higher self need to learn? And so sometimes this is where it gets really hard in a 3D lens is to say that sometimes bad things happen because the soul needs that bad thing to happen in order to learn a bigger lesson, in order to gain
Mhm.
some sort of perspective. And so a trauma happens. And so maybe it's the energy that they're carrying within themselves because we we know that energy is carried on from our mother and our father, our
Mhm.
um, from our parents, from our ancestors. So it's a combination of the energy that's passed on, the energy that we're exposed to, the other individuals who have caused us harm, caused us pain. And if somebody is really intuitively open, intuitively aware, um, then that energy will come, that darker energy will come and attack that light. Any kind of light that somebody has, they want that.
Mm. That is so interesting. I feel like that makes a lot of sense when you think about relationships and like how people can attract bad relationships or negative relationships with like
Hmm.
dark or light attracting dark or dark seeking light.
Exactly. Exactly. All of our experiences, they're all mirrors of ourselves, whether we're conscious of it or not.
Right. So when you when you started working with your teacher or your coach or your guide, what what were your beginning steps to really tap into this gift?
Oh, self-doubt. Because I always
Mm,
convinced myself that it's just my imagination. I'm not hearing those voices. I don't see those things happening. It's just my imagination. It's not real. And we probably spent a good year. She's a very patient individual,
mhm,
convincing me of this is not your imagination. This is real. And so once I was able to get over that hump of, is this actually real? It was a little bit like gaslighting myself. Um,
mm,
and so once I was able to get over that hump and just say, okay, well, what if it is real? What if these things that I'm seeing, that I'm feeling, that I'm sensing, that I'm experiencing, what if it is real? Then what? And I just continue to lean into that curiosity of what if it is real? What if it is real? And then the magic, all of the magic really started to show up in my life. And that's when I realized I'm like, no, okay, this, like, I cannot make this shit up. This
yeah.
is real.
Can you remember one of the first things that happened that you realized, like, okay, this is real?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know if I think it's probably the feathers. So when I was really trying to figure out whether this was real or not,
Mhm,
I was surrounded by feathers. Feathers would show up like in the most weirdest, most random place. I love indoor gardening, love it to
mhm.
pieces. And I would be playing with my plants and like working with them in their pot, and I would find a feather like buried in the soil of a plant. And just the feathers just kept reproducing. I remember this one time I was outside and I'll often talk just like to my guides out loud and
Mhm.
just try to figure something out. There were no birds flying over me, but there was a feather that literally fell from the sky and landed right in front of me. And I'm like, okay, I hear what you're saying. This is real, and I will start paying attention.
Yes.
And ever since
And
then, feathers, it's the number one way that they communicate with me.
and is it just a sign of, like, this is a time where you should be aware? Or, like, how do you interpret that communication?
For me, it's just validation. Validation that I'm
Mm,
not crazy, that this is real, that the journey that I'm on is the path that I'm supposed to be walking on.
mhm. Did you ever talk to a professional or, like, a psychologist or anything who tried to convince you that, like, maybe this was a mental illness?
Yeah, yeah, I've thought about that so many times. And that was one of my stumbling blocks with my teacher was like, I think I might have mental health, like serious mental health. And like she
Mhm.
went through a number of different things. She's like, no, you don't have mental health. And I saw a
Yeah,
therapist, like seeing a therapist, that was my first step of like, I really think I have some major problems here. And I, I, I I've now come to understand I don't actually have mental health.
right.
That's not what this is.
Yeah, and it's like you don't wanna I like, I think my biggest fear if I would to do something like that, is like someone would, like, try to convince me otherwise, and then
Yeah,
I'd, like, go down this medicalized route, but you didn't
yeah,
have to, like, resist anything like that.
yeah, yeah. Because I think that's how fear shows up in others, that because we can't see it and we can't touch it,
Mhm.
it must not be real. I don't think our brains, for everybody, we have the ability to think that big because that's really, really scary to think about.
Yeah. No, and well, we only use, like, what, 10% of our brains, so
Yeah,
it's probably a lot like, there's other areas of your brain that are being activated outside of the norm.
yeah, yeah,
Have you ever used your gifts to, like, give messages from the other side to people or to, like, other people
yeah.
that you meet?
I have. Yeah, that doesn't happen very often, but sometimes it'll be really overwhelming where I have to stop them and I have to ask them. Um, so when my partner and I, when we went on a trip, like last year, um, one of our, like one of the staff there, her dad was very ill,
Mm-hmm.
and we ended up giving her money to go visit her father because I knew that he was dying. Um, and she didn't know that, but I knew that he was dying. So sometimes I can connect with energy that isn't necessarily gone, but
Mm-hmm.
close to leaving, close to dying.
Right.
Um, just even maybe about a month ago, one of my colleagues experienced quite a loss, and had no idea that I could do any of this. And her father showed up um, very strongly, and I was able to support her with some of her grief. Not all the time do they show up, but
Mhm.
sometimes they do.
Would you call yourself a medium?
I don't know if I would call myself a medium. I think maybe that might be the next phase of my learning is to find another teacher who might be
Mm-hmm.
able to help me to delve into that a bit more. Because I don't feel it for everybody.
Right.
I find that when somebody has just recently passed or close to passing, I can hear and feel them a lot easier than somebody who has perhaps died several years ago, and their soul is further away, their energy is further
Mm-hmm.
away. But when the energy is closer, I can, I have an easier time tapping into it.
Got it. Closer or sort of like straddling both worlds.
Yeah, yeah. Not quite fully transitioned, but
Mm-hmm.
still holding on to this human life, still holding on to being here.
And then do you also pick up on energies or auras of people?
Um, I have, again, I try to, because it gets really overwhelming,
Mm-hmm.
I tell the universe, I'm like, only give me what I can handle. So I don't get it all the time, but there have
Mm-hmm.
been circumstances where I'll be sitting in meetings or different things, and I'll just see symbols show up, or I'll start seeing like huge auras show up around people. But it gets really overwhelming, especially in like my Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 work when it's very crisis driven, that
Mm-hmm.
I almost don't have time for that because I have to be really focused, that I can't deal with all of the other noise that's happening around
Yeah.
me.
And is there a way to sort of turn it off, or do you just have to like learn how to focus or tune it out?
I have learned how to block it. I mean, I spent my entire
Mm-hmm.
life blocking it out, so
Mm-hmm.
I can go back into those old routines pretty quickly and easily. But when I get like when I was seeing my coach, my teacher really regularly, it became really sometimes it became harder to close that door because I was very intentionally trying to walk through something.
Right.
Um, so I'll try to control how much I want to expose myself to.
Yeah. And what has it been like for your own self-discovery to have like to be walking through that door and like tapping more into your gifts? Have you learned more just about yourself or spoken with people who are trying to connect with you personally?
Um, I think that I have learned. Uh, what was the question again? Sorry.
Like how has have you used this gift for yourself basically and to kind
Oh,
of tap
yeah.
into spirits or energies that are wanting to communicate with you or tell you things about you or
Yeah.
your life?
Yeah, no, all the time. That's probably my biggest way to connect. I have
Hmm.
this one energy. She showed up for me, I don't know how long ago now, maybe about 8 months ago or so.
Hmm.
And she just showed up in the front seat of my car, and she just now drives to work with me all the time. And she follows me around. So when I meditate, she's one of the people who I call in because I know she's here to help me.
Hmm.
Um, and sometimes different energies, they will come in and introduce themselves. Just last week, I was meditating, and sometimes when I meditate, I go to a very specific place.
Hmm.
Um, and there are different images within that place. And but when I looked, typically when I looked to my left, there was nobody to my left. It was just a field of open grass.
Hmm.
But this particular meditation session, I looked to my left and there was somebody standing there. Um, and then I interacted with a little bit with it, but I knew that I wasn't ready and it knew that I wasn't ready. So
Hmm.
it haven't really fully interacted, but I think I know who it is. But all of the energies that come in, they come in to teach me something. They're here to give me gifts so that I can really step into my light and I can
Hmm.
really fulfill my own life purpose and why I believe I'm I'm on this planet.
Hmm. And it seems like part of it is like the maturing of the gifts, like
Yes.
learning it and tapping into it, like not at a younger age, but like an older age where you can really actually understand it and not have all these things happen to you, but have more control over it so you can use it as a tool.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And maturing of self as well. I mean, I'm in my mid 40s now. So,
Hmm.
like, the, the fuck at 40s are very real.
Yeah.
Sorry if
And
that's
you know,
inappropriate.
no, that's fine. So you don't have to feel like I need to like fit in or I don't want anyone to think I'm weird. It's just kind of like, no, this is me, and opening more myself up more to it.
Exactly, exactly. And I'm learning the spaces as to where I can do that and where I can't. So, like
Mhm.
working in a system, working in structures, it's a lot harder to do that. Um, so, I go as, professionally to my Monday to 9 to 5 gig, but this
Mhm.
coaching world, this coaching work, this allows me to be more authentic.
Yeah. Do you have any conflicts with growing up Catholic and then like tapping into the spiritual world, or does it
Mm.
feel like a divine gift?
Um, no, I don't have any conflicts around that. I mean, I do have some conflicts with Catholicism,
Mhm.
um, but I feel like this was my gift, and being born into a family that has Catholic values, I think only taught me, and I only gained from it. And
Yeah.
it allowed me to heal from some of the religious systemic beliefs that come with any religious institution.
Right. Yeah. And so now we've connected through Jay Shetty Coaching School.
Yep.
What has drawn you into life coaching?
Oh, good question. I always knew that I wanted to become a life coach. That would have been my first career choice. But
Mhm.
back in the 90s, coaching wasn't the reputable career that it is today. So I chose social work.
Mhm.
Um, and now I'm in my mid 40s. My relationship is really solid. My son has launched off to university. Like, I just feel like I'm in a really good place in life. And I've
Mhm.
done a lot of work on myself to step into my own light and to find my own purpose. And now it's just, it's me time. It's time for me to do the
Yeah.
thing that I initially wanted to do. And I looked at different coaching schools for a while. I went on a few different info sessions,
Hmm.
but none of them spoke to me like the Jay Shetty program did.
Yeah. Do you feel like you have a strong intuition in general, or is it because of this gift that you are learning, like, oh, like just kind of like an intuition master?
Mm. I think I do have an intuition, but I think that intuition is also fed by the things that I see and I hear.
Hmm.
I've learned to trust myself a lot more and trust that when I'm hearing things or seeing things that I've learned to trust to go into that direction.
Yeah. And do you have any advice for someone who's may also like feel like they have these gifts or think they have these gifts or feel just more like more spiritually connected than the average person? Like
Mm.
what advice would you give to that person? What could they do to tap more into that?
I would say to surrender and to let go of everything that you have learned and
Hmm.
everything that has been passed down to you and just surrender because we do have the beautiful gift of free will, but there's also so much that we don't have control over, and how you stay present and how you connect with yourself and listen to yourself, that that will take that's a great place to start. But surrender
Hmm.
and be okay that none of this matters. None of it
Yeah.
matters. We are
How
full of
did
boxes
how
and binaries.
yeah, how do you cope with fear or judgment? Or how have you
Mm.
over the years?
I think that's still a lesson that I'm working through. Um, I think, it's funny the things that you manifest. When I was a youth, I would always say the thing I fear the most is fear itself because I
Hmm.
never want fear to be the thing that's holding me back, and fear is the thing that's holding me back. Like I have this, it's like I can feel myself propelling forward, but there's a little bit of fear of just how powerful am I and what happens if I really unleash my power? Then what will
Hmm.
I see? And I think for me, it's just around going slow and being kind towards myself and remembering that if I don't get it in this lifetime, then I'll try again next time, but I'll do
Hmm.
my very best in this life to help to heal and love our humanity.
Yeah. And when you say maybe if you don't get it in this lifetime, do you mean like full expression of your gifts?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So kind
I
of like the
feel like
fear is a yeah, go ahead.
I feel like there's like this thing that's holding me back, and
Hmm.
that's the thing that I'm working on right now is what is that string that's holding me back? And I don't know if it's because it's that I'm in this Monday to Friday 9 to 5 gig that where I can't be authentic. I have to just
Hmm.
perform in a certain way. Um, I am curious that when I am ready to let that go and ready to take on coaching and be far more authentic, I'm
Hmm.
curious to know what will happen.
Like, will you be a totally different person without
I think,
like any ties to a 9 to 5 or real world?
yeah, yeah, yeah. When I remove myself from those associations, when I remove myself from, and we've talked about this, from the values that come with capitalism and
Hmm.
imperialism and um, and paternalism, when I remove myself from all of that stuff of hierarchy and all of the bullshit that happens in institutions and systems, and
Hmm.
I'm able to just authentically do the work the way that I want to do it and the way that I think it should be done, I'm very curious as to what will happen.
Yeah, it's like the freedom for in the time and space required for full expression of self, because
Yeah,
yeah, it could look very different for you if you don't have to talk to anybody or worry about being perceived.
yeah.
Have you ever done a retreat or anything like that, like where you're just out in nature, even like camping, where you're just out in nature for an extended amount of time, so without any responsibilities?
Like with people?
No, just even with
Like,
yourself or your partner?
oh, I mean, I haven't been camping in years. When I was a teenager, yes. Um, I would say that yes and no. I mean, when I walk my dogs, I'm very fortunate that I live right near a bunch of walking paths by open pasture,
Mhm.
so I still get that country girl vibe. Um, but camping, no. The thought of honestly sleeping on the ground at my age isn't really attractive for me.
Understandable.
Yeah. I don't love that. I love a bed.
Do you still look at the stars and feel that homesickness?
Yeah, I do. I do. And because I live in a city, I don't see the stars in the same way, but when I do see them, I'm always out. If I can just find even one star, then I'll really
Mhm.
focus on it and I'll really tune into it. And I've come to be at peace with that homesickness feeling. I
Mhm.
get waves where it's really overwhelming and I'm like, "Oh my God, just not to say that I'm suicidal. I've had to clarify this many times. I'm like, okay, there's just too much pain on this planet. Like, people
Mhm.
need to get their shit together. Like, I'm ready to go now. Like, is my job here done? Because
Yeah.
there's way too much pain and there's way too much judgment and there's just way too much. And then I move through that and I remember, I'm like, right, I'm here to offer something different. I'm here to help with healing. I'm here to talk about love. I'm here to talk about connection. I'm here to
Mhm.
show up in a different way.
I am really curious to ask you about like how our personal connection and what made you like in so I okay, so for the people listening, I was in we Leigh and I were in a group coaching session. I was being coached through some like mother wound childhood trauma things, and Leigh was like asked me just the right questions that like really opened me up and like helped guide me into being in the being in the moment with my childhood self. I'm I'm curious on your experience of that. Like were you tapping into anything
Mhm.
from the other side to help me realize that, or just like how
Mhm.
did you know?
Cuz I could feel your energy. I could see it. And I knew that we we had a contract and I could just feel you and I had all those questions. I'm like, "Oh, beautiful Courtney, you just need to like think about this. Just think about this stuff." And that's why,
Yeah.
so in the middle of the session when everybody was going around, I like turned my camera off and I had a little meditation. And as you know, I use cards. And so I
Mhm.
used this deck of cards and I did a one card pull and I can't remember what card it was. And initially, I thought it was a card for you, but it was turned out it was a card for me, and it was all about go for it, just do it. And
Oh.
and if you remember, like I didn't talk a lot in those sessions,
Mhm.
and so I just said, okay, I just need to do this with her, and like people are gonna think I'm really freaking crazy, and she brought out the tarot cards once, so maybe she'll vibe with it, maybe she'll go with it, maybe she'll like
Yeah.
think I'm like okay. And I just went for it. It
Yeah.
was like a little bit of like an un it was like a sigh of relief for me because I could show up in that space as more authentic
Mhm.
towards you, who I knew that you were in pain, and I could
Mhm.
see the energy that you were getting bogged down with. And I was like, oh, I can help you with that energy, which is why I then reached out to you afterwards to say, hey, I can help
Yeah.
you.
Oh, that's awesome. And like, and for me, like I was crying throughout the session, but like everyone's like kind of like helping me articulate what's wrong. But you were really the person that was like, okay, like we've had enough of like everything that's wrong. Like, let's now heal this. And
Mm-hmm.
like basically you put me in my childhood room and I could see it as clear as day. And like I was standing there watching this little girl with her journal and like crying and upset and just giving myself the energy, the positive energy of like of healing and like everything is okay. And like I
Mm-hmm.
know you asked me what would I tell myself in that moment. And I was able to just give myself like really hug my childhood self and like
Mm-hmm.
give
Mm-hmm.
myself the reassurance.
Mm-hmm.
And still I was crying my eyes out, but it felt like such a purge of sadness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And for me, like I see energy healers on TikTok. And
Yeah.
so when I imagine energy healing, I imagine like someone with their hands kind of waving in
Yeah.
front of the camera, like pulling out the negative energy. And like that's what I was
Yeah.
expecting. But
Yeah.
you really work through visualization and like
Yeah.
coaching the mind.
Yeah.
Can you tell
And
me more about your experience? Yeah, tell me more about that.
yeah, you just nailed exactly what my style is and what I know my strength is. It's really combining my all of my social work experience, my ability to figure out what is the question that needs to be asked with the energy that's happening in the room and what is my
Mm,
knowledge of energy, because you were holding on to that little girl energy, because when you were sitting in that in your in your room, and when you
mhm,
described that, it's like I can see you there. And when you talked about you hugging yourself, I can see you hugging yourself and just the
mhm,
beautiful emotion. But when you're little, you have that you have that energy, whatever that feeling may be, that's still stored inside. And so within
yeah,
my coaching practice, it's about going back to that
mhm.
and helping you to heal that and let that go, because that's the only way we can move forward.
Yes. It's and it's so important, the healing aspect. It's not just talking about it, but
Mhm.
actively healing it.
Yes. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
love that you give the power to the client to do the healing work themselves. It's not like I have to rely on someone to like manipulate my energy
Mhm.
or it's like the guidance to go within yourself.
Yeah. We all have the power within ourselves. We all have it. It's just slowing down enough and to pay attention to what's happening. And sometimes within the coaching role, and what I see my role is
Mhm.
being curious alongside you and asking some questions around, when was the first time that you felt that feeling? And tell me
Mhm.
what that was like. And what do you remember about that time? And, let's go back there and let's heal that and let's release that so that you
Mhm.
can move forward.
Yeah. It just helps it helps with energy too, like motivation, everything
Mm-hmm.
to have
Mm-hmm.
the healing and not like healing, understanding plus healing, I
Mm-hmm.
would say.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Which is what
What
I believe
yeah, go
I
ahead.
believe is what I'm here on this planet to help to do, is to
Yes.
help with healing.
Yes. It's like self-help and self-healing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of like a self-healing coach.
Kind of, yeah.
What other experiences have you had in coaching so far?
Um, what do you mean by that?
I guess with your gift and utilizing it to coach others. Have you been able to tap into that more, or has it been more
Hmm.
like uh I guess by the book? Because in the school
Yeah,
we're not being coached to heal. We're just like we're coached to ask questions.
yeah, yeah. No, I don't do anything by the book. Um, I, I shouldn't say that because that makes me seem like really rebellious. I do have values and ethics, but I think in my coaching sessions, it's really
Mhm.
about starting off with wherever it is that they want to start and then
Mhm.
figuring out what will help them to move forward. What are they feeling stuck with? And constantly staying curious and just asking questions. Well, what do
Mhm.
you think about that? What do you think about that? And sometimes people just need a little bit of guidance. And maybe
Mhm.
that is the social worker in me. And I know we're not supposed to give advice, but I think sometimes people just need that reassurance of, guides are listening. And maybe
Yeah.
this is another way where you can have you tried this in order to try hearing what they have to say.
Right.
A lot of my well, I think pretty much all of them, they all end up being some kind of spiritual base.
Mhm. And it's like helping people recognize the tools in our spiritual toolbox.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And helping to shift mindset as well, which is an which is a spiritual element because when we think
Mhm.
something is going to be bad, it's probably going to be bad. But if we believe in love, if we believe in gratitude, if we believe in the good, and if we are willing to see the good in all circumstances, then that will be our experience.
And do you I this is a little bit of a change in direction, but
Mm,
you've like helped me so much with visualization to heal past traumas. Do you
hmm.
believe in the power of visualization for manifesting?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh. I'm just sitting here right now looking at my vision board, and I've had a vision board for years and years and years.
Mhm.
Um, and that's just one tool that I use, but like I am an avid believer in visualization. Visualization
Nice.
attached with action.
Yes. Okay, what advice can you give for that? Like what sort of actions? Because I think sometimes like for me early days of visualizing, I'd be like, "Oh, I want a bike." And then I'd like go out and buy a bike on my credit card, but it's like I don't know if that's exactly it because now I'm
Mm-hmm.
just putting myself in debt and I have to like really work to pay it off.
Yeah.
What is visualization with action? Like is it spiritually guided action? How can we like tap into that guidance?
I think it's a little bit of both. So for me, when I
Mhm.
visualize, just as a really practical example, every morning when I drive to work, I visualize myself. Where am I actually driving to? Because I know that I do want to leave the Monday to Friday. So I visualize and like I'm going to this client appointment for coaching. I'm going to meet with this executive and this is what I'm going to say. And I
Mhm.
I literally will talk out loud around what I'm saying to them and what the coaching session is going to be. So that's the visualization part of it. The action part is it's all of the it's all of the action. It's making sure that I have got my website up. It's making sure that I'm doing things in order to bring my coaching practice to life. Because I can sit in my car and I can visualize myself meeting with an executive to talk about coaching, but if I'm not actually taking any concrete steps to materialize Savage Living, which is my
Mhm.
coaching practice, then it's not going to go anywhere. Things just don't fall from the sky. I have to believe it. I have to feel it. I have to sense it. I have to thank the universe as though it has already arrived while taking action. And sometimes that action, a lot of that action is I'm going to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and this is the time when I'm going to work on this and coming up with a work plan of this is all of the hustle that I'm going to do this week.
Yeah.
and next week and the week after and the week after, while keeping that vision really clear in my mind of where it is that I want to go and where it is that I
Yes.
am going,
Yeah. And
while
yeah,
holding gratitude.
actualizing our manifestations it requires action step by step, not
Yes.
just
Yeah.
one leap.
Yeah, that's right. That's
So
right.
for anyone wanting to get in touch with you for coaching, where can they find you?
They can go to www.savageliving.ca. My website is not yet up, but it is one of those skills that I am learning how to do. My goal for myself is to have it up and operational by January the 1st,
Well, perfect, because
2024.
the podcast will come out probably in March.
Oh, oh, help us all if my website is not up by then. I might need an intervention.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Leigh. I loved getting to hear your story and your background more. And again, you've helped me so much already and just keeping me motivated and helping me heal. So I just really grateful for you.
And I'm really grateful for you, Courtney. You have tremendous light within you, and I think you have more strength and more knowledge than you are aware of. And I think, and I've said this to you before, I think you being where you're located right now, it is
Hmm.
exactly where you're meant to be.
Thank
There.
you.
Thank you for joining us today. If you like what you heard, please subscribe and join us in our next conversation where we'll be exploring the extraordinary lives of ordinary people. I'm Courtney Lofton, and this is Ordinary Eccentrics.